I've got a challenge for you. Think of a word without the letter E. Easy enough? Now what about a whole sentence? We're getting a bit harder. Now imagine writing an entire book without the letter E. Sounds impossible, right? Well, one mysterious man, a certain Ernest Vincent Wright, did just that, and I'm about to tell you the story of the weirdest book you've probably ever heard of. The Great Gatsby. Gadsby. A story of over 50,000 words without using the letter E. As you've probably realised, the letter E is pretty common. In fact, it's found in roughly half of the top 500 most used words in the English language. This left Wright with some pretty big headaches and without a lot of very common words. The obvious being the. Also gone are the majority of pronouns like he, she, they, them, theirs. You get the picture. Past tense words that use ed are out of the question, as are any number between 6 and 30. Even the word chapter itself is banned. In fact, E is so common it makes up 12% of the letters in any given text. What Wright set out to create is known as a lipogram, a type of restrictive writing where an author deliberately avoids a specific letter or group of letters. A reminder, this book is 50,000 words long, and there's more to this story than first meets the eye. Wright's life is shrouded in mystery. There's little record of his past, when he was born, or even what country he was from. Some sources suggest he was American, others say he was English. Not even Google is fully sure who he was. If you search his name, you'll be shown this man. But that's actually an American entertainer called Jack Benny, not our man, Ernest. In fact, this right here is possibly the only surviving photo of the elusive Ernest Vincent Wright. What we do know is that he was based in California, was writing in the early 1900s, and he was very scared of this letter right here. Gadsby, which is named after its protagonist, is one of the weirdest books you'll ever read. What compelled him to write it? Well, according to the man himself, his inspiration came after discovering a poem written without the letter, and from reading that the letter E occurred 5 times more than any other. This isn't actually the case. Nevertheless, Wright spent over 5 months typing away at Gadsby, resorting to literally tying the E key down on his typewriter so he wouldn't accidentally sneak in the letter. And this wasn't the first time he picked a fight with the letter E. 7 years earlier, in 1930, he'd written to a newspaper asking them to hold a lipogram competition to see if anyone could beat his writing skills for a cash sum of $250. Unsurprisingly, they turned him down. To overcome his own self-imposed linguistic handcuffs, Wright had to get creative with his writing. The novel's narrator outlines his struggles from the very start. In my story, that mighty obstruction will constantly stand in my path. And as you can imagine, the book has some interesting ways of phrasing things. Faces is often replaced with physiognomy, and eyes are always changed to orbs. At one point, a wedding cake is referred to as an astonishing loaf of culinary art. And instead of being described as nice or pleasant, music is seen as a charming fairy which knows no human words. In the ultimate alpha move, Wright even apologises for not being able to use the letter E without using the letter E. So I trust that a critical public will hold constantly in mind that I am voluntarily avoiding words containing that symbol, which is by far the most common inclusion in writing or Anglo-Saxon as it is today. Many of our most common words cannot show, so I must adopt synonyms. Quirkiness aside, Gadsby actually reads surprisingly well, and it's hard to find too many examples where it's obvious that the E is missing. Sure, there are parts where the prose can get a bit gloopy, but by and large, Wright's achievement is pretty impressive. So I bet you're all wondering, what's the subject of this crazy work of the English language? Perhaps a sci-fi take on a group of vowel-dodging aliens from the planet... Well, not quite. It's about urban planning. More specifically, it follows the dying fictional city of Branton Hills throughout the early 1900s, which is returned to its former glory by the efforts of protagonist John Gadsby and some young people, referred to as youth in the book because he couldn't use the word teenagers. Funnily enough, there are actually 4 examples of the letter E being used in the original print of the book. 3 thus and 1 use in the word officer. Not quite sure how that happened. Ironically, Wright's own name also contains 3 E's, although he was definitely aware of this. In the prologue to the book, he even hits back at a lady who claimed he was a fake. Somewhat unsurprisingly, Wright struggled to find a publisher for his book, and it was Vanity published sometime between 1937 and 1939. No one is 100% sure. An urban legend suggests that, in a dark twist of fate, Wright died on the same day of the book's publication. It reportedly sold 50 copies on release, no thanks in part to a warehouse fire in LA that wiped out most of the copies, along with a local firefighter who attended the blaze. Humble beginnings aside, the book developed a cult following in the second half of the 20th century, and original copies have fetched anywhere from $1,000 to $4,000. It would also go on to inspire other lipogrammers, including French writer Georges Perec, who would go one step further than Wright and produce an 80,000 word work, in French, without the letter E. Thankfully, I'm not French, so I have no idea how difficult this is compared to English. Wright could never have known that his quirky little book would grow the cult status that it has today. It would go on to be sort of parodied in The Simpsons, and there's even a subreddit related to avoiding using the letter E. I myself had planned to write this entire script without using the letter E, but I don't make enough ad revenue to put myself through that. Instead, I've taken some inspiration from Wright's incredible achievement, but chosen a different letter to omit from this script. Can you guess which one? Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not drop a like and a subscribe? And if you think you could do better than Mr. Wright, why not have a go down in the comments?